And we are recording. Hello, everybody. Today we have Jeff Morey from Lawyers Title and Jordan Goodman, Portfolio Escrow. And today we're going to be talking about the real estate process of getting into contract and what the benefits and the uses of title and escrow are. So I've been working with these guys for a while. They are very trustworthy, reputable people, and I know they're experts in their fields with tons of knowledge. So I wanted to kind of poke a couple of questions at them and see, what's the point of title? What's the point of escrow? And how they are serving people who are buying and selling in San Diego. So Jeff, tell us a little bit about title.
It's very interesting. I mean, it's obviously a staple throughout the process. So really, sorry about that. At the end of the day, there's, what is title, right? There's three. I think I would say there's three main factors, right? So number one, title insurance protects the transaction and everybody involved in the transaction. So this will protect all parties with any lingering issues that might be connected with that property in the past, so they don't come up later down the road. Number two, it protects the buyer, right? So when the new homeowner purchases the property, and they're covered through title. So if anything comes back, a mechanic's lien, a judgment against the past seller, anything that might have happened in the past, they're definitely covered throughout the entire time they own the property. So
let's pause right there and kind of like simplify it just a touch. What do you mean protection? So like if I am selling my house, how is it protecting me? And if I was buying your house, like what protection am I getting?
So you, the seller, you provide the homeowner's policy. So basically, it's normally the homeowner's policy is a little more than the lender's policy. And it all pertains to the actual sales price of the property. So this is basically, you're basically deeding clean title to the new buyer, right? So you're saying, hey, here's my homeowner's policy. I'm basically stating that I'm delivering clear title. So 2 years down the road, the gentleman that did your remodel or did any type of work, there won't be like a mechanic lien that pops up where he comes to you, the new buyer, like, hey, I did this work on the property, or there was a judgment, or there was any type of another lien that pops up. And if it's on title, and if it was missed, or anything didn't get conveyed or recorded correctly, your insurance would step in and we would actually take care of that claim.
So
basically,
when I'm selling my house, I'm the only one who owes money on my house. There's not someone else who
down the road something that
needs to get paid before I get paid.
Right. And that's, I mean, it's funny because it is a one-time fee, and not to mention you're basically just, you're just giving them clear title. Like, and if anything does pop up, we will then take the loss, right? It'll be something that, the company that missed, and with the insurance, depending on how big it is, we would obviously take care of that and remove that, and it would be clear. So at the end of the day, then the lender, so the second policy is the lender's policy. So the buyer is required by the lender to have lender's insurance. So this basically ensures that the lender is in first position in the event anything happens down the road. So, I mean, and it's a one-time thing, and it's covered for the whole entire time you have the home. So everything is normally researched and covered. There's not a lot of issues normally down the road since we do all the due diligence ahead of time, but it does happen, and that buyer and seller will definitely be covered. But that's why we try to do our due diligence to make sure we don't miss anything. So there you go.
Okay.
Clean.
Nope. Keep going.
No, I will definitely just talk on and on about the same thing. So yes, questions are great.
Well, you said you had three main points, so it sounds like, okay, we're getting.
Yeah, so I kind of went through. So you stopped me at two. So basically, we insure the transaction and all parties involved, right? Buyer, seller. The second one is the protection for the buyer, and then the third is the protection for the lender. So yeah, it's very interesting space we're in. But yes, and I've had the same team. I've been working with them for 14 years, and we definitely do a hell of a job.
So
We're always here.
I've heard one horror story of someone who was like renting a home was trying to sell it. It was up in like LA County somewhere, and they were like pretending to be the owner of the house and trying to like sell the home. Like,
Well, a
what?
lot of these things, it's crazy, especially now with everything involved with wire fraud and I mean, obviously, title companies, we handle a lot of transactions, right? So a lot of these items were happening, people taking up people's identity and trying to sell things or get transfers, but they'd always be doing it late in the day. And when the company's, moving faster there, that's why everybody, it's because a lot of times, you got to make sure the vesting is correctly done. There's so many times where people record deed, like myself, I could go record a quick claim deed against your property, walk into the city and change the vesting. It's an uninsured deed, right? But at the end of the day, when you actually go to sell the property, all that has to be reinvestigated to see who is the actual owner and or why is this person on title, to make sure somebody can't transfer the property without the actual correct owners being aware. So
Then what
it
is
gets
the
deep.
time
It gets
frame?
deep on that side.
Yeah. So if I'm thinking about selling my home, like how soon should I be talking to a title officer?
Well, obviously prior to the contract, right? You have to have you have to everybody needs, well, all parties have to be involved, right? So maybe you got a divorce, or maybe it's not. We need to find out who needs to sign off on the property. So a husband can't go sell the house without his wife knowing about it. So she would actually have to sign off on it too. So whoever's actually connected to the property, or if it's in a trust, we have to review the trust to make sure that there's no other heirs or beneficiaries that need to know about the sale itself, and have them sign off on it too. So everybody's aware that nothing's going to trade or sell without everybody's acknowledging the fact. So
So it's just it. How long does like the research process take? Like, is
oh,
this
once we would have to review the trust. I mean, once we have the documentation and the correct vesting, I mean it's like 24, 48 hours.
okay?
And it's fairly quick as long as we have all the correct documentation. It's funny how some people can't find these documents, but they want to do things. We're like, well, definitely going to need to see the trust. We're definitely going to need to see or if somebody's passed away, we definitely need to see a death cert. I mean, all we're doing, we're not trying to hold up the process by any means, but we're also just not trying to sell somebody's house without everybody aware.
Yeah.
Shocking, right? But yeah, and at the end of the day, it's in the scope of the prices of homes these days, and the actual amount of what the title policy is, what you're getting covered for, is pretty nominal in the grand scope of things to be protected, to make sure everything is clean and clear,
Is
and
the
there's
fee
nothing comes up later.
a flat rate, or is it like proportionate to the sale of the home?
It always comes down to sales price. So, but it goes up nominally, right? So if you're selling your house for 500,000, or if you're selling your house for 550, it's only going to go up a few dollars at that point.
Okay.
But and these are filed rates. Nothing can be changed, and we'd love to give out deals, but the Department of Insurance, we have filed rates, so it stays the same across the board on that.
Okay, so it's regulated then.
There you go.
All right. So then, if
you got title,
go for it.
Go ahead. Nope, you're up.
Okay. So like if we are selling the place, it doesn't take long to do the vestige, but like, is there any pre-documents that I should have ready for title?
I definitely would have, this could probably fall under the side of escrow too, is get the statement of information filled out. Because this way, so we're going to run the search on the home, right? Well, a lot of times people won't have the statement of information filled out maybe until the end, we'll have to run them personally, right? So we have the house, something could be put on, there could be a lien put or pops up that's attached to the property, but right before the actual house closes, regardless, we run the socials on the parties themselves, and something else could pop up, right? Like a child support judgment or something like that. It could a small tax lien that wasn't found before. So I would definitely, when you're meeting with, when you're talking to your seller, I would definitely have them fill that out, just because you want to see if there's anything that comes up regardless. So you don't have that in the final hour of your transaction. So getting all your ducks in a row ahead of time is perfect, but definitely the statement of information by us running their social personally to see if anything pops up that wasn't attached to the house that doesn't come up on the seller themselves.
Okay, great. So it's not a lot of upfront information. So
Yeah, and
then,
at the end of the transaction, right before we close, they run it again anyway in case something was done in the process. I mean, you're in escrow, 30, 45 days, something could, who knows that somebody finds out that you're selling and they owe some money, so they would definitely might try to put some, attach something to the person themselves. So we definitely check right before the final close. So
cool. So
title in a nutshell, Greg.
Title in a
Title
nutshell.
in a nutshell.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's a lot of paperwork, but then like, let's go switch over to portfolio. So like an escrow process, like how does escrow and title work together? And also let's actually take a half step back. What is escrow? And then we'll kind of go into the deeper details. Jordan.
Yeah, perfect. So escrow, the simplest way I've had it explained to me is it's a neutral third party. So essentially you have two strangers transacting, right? So someone wants to buy a house, someone wants to sell a house. They don't know each other. Their agents may or may not know each other. And it's really just that neutral third party to take in docs, take in money, and make sure everything's done according to the contract. In addition, we work with lenders, title reps, HOA companies, and we really are the hub of the entire transaction. So with title, something that we like to do specifically at Portfolio is we'll do what's called a pre-escrow, where we pull title early and hopefully get in front of a lot of these issues, because I think sometimes people don't fully understand what goes into getting some of these things done. We'll order your HOA docs early. We'll order your NHD early, all these docs, so that when we're ready to officially, when you're ready to accept your offer, which is so exciting, we can go into it knowing exactly what's going on.
That's awesome.
I like to think of when I'm talking to agents or different people's in the party and they're asking me for different documentation, I just let everybody know. Or when I'm talking to a seller, they're like, what's escrow? What's title doing? I'm like, well, escrow is, I try to tell them, like, escrow is like the quarterback, dude. They got the playbook. They're going to run all the plays. We're just going to get the information in the end or in the beginning. And then, we're going to kick the extra point. We're going to close out at the end. But escrow is like if escrow definitely is going to know everything that's going on the whole time, and they need to know everything that's going to go on the whole time. So I always refer back to them, because they have the playbook, they have the escrow instructions on every checklist of everything that needs to happen. We just do the due diligence on our side and close out the end, but they're definitely like the quarterback running the team.
Right. So we see the residential purchase agreement, we go over it, we put all contingency dates in, and we're just trying to make sure that everyone's hitting those check marks, so that we can get to that close date. And I think the best thing you can do, especially as a seller, is be upfront with your agent. Let them know if you know of any, hey, I didn't pay my HOA fees for the last few months, or hey, I didn't pay my taxes last year. I know it can be kind of a hard conversation to have, but when you have that discussion up front, it's going to make that entire transaction so much easier, because everyone's aware. And at the end of the day, we're all here to help, right? So there's no judgment. That's, I think, one of the nice things about escrow is, we're a completely neutral third party. We're here for the sellers and the buyers, but help us help you, let us know up front, this is what's going on. And then that way we can help you get it taken care of.
Help us help you.
Yes, that's the best way you can describe it.
So then how can you be the neutral party and like benefit both the buyer and the seller? So like, I mean, who picks escrow, or, how can it be truly a neutral position?
So it's a great question. Usually sellers get to choose, and at least at Portfolio, all of our escrow officers are licensed. That's not something that's required from every escrow. So I think it's really important. The Department of Business Oversight.
Okay.
So also we're all background checked. That's standard across all escrows, but it's really good to research who's doing it. And I think at the end of the day, our team just cares. Most escrow officers are really just, they're smart. They're good at finding information. They're very processed individuals. So they like to know this is what's happening at this date, this is what's happening at this date. And their goal is to just make sure that in the end, everybody's winning, right? So all that money's in, the loan's approved, everything on the contract has been done according to the contract. And then you get to hand over those keys and the seller gets to hopefully move on to their next home.
So if there is a dispute, all information goes back to you, and then escrow is the one who determines like what the contract says compared to like maybe that phone call conversation that you had with somebody and it didn't get written down, or it did get written down.
Exactly. Because a lot of times, you know, buyers and sellers, it can be a very emotional process. And if they don't see eye to eye on something at the end of the day, you know, hopefully before any kind of attorneys have to get involved, escrow can really help kind of straighten the ship and say, you know, we hear you, but this is on, you know, this is the process that needs to be followed. And this is what was agreed upon at the original contract or any kind of amendments that happened. And this is what needs to happen in order to get this deal done.
Okay. And so what are like some preliminary documentation and stuff like that? If I'm selling my house, like you said, pre-escrow, like what does that involve?
Yeah. So the best thing you can do as a seller is if you have a trust or an LLC, or if you are selling in the event of a death, like all of those documents that you can kind of prepare, you know, similar to like when you sell a car, right? You got to prepare all those documents to hand it over to sign your car over. If you can get that stuff up front, that's going to help as soon as you sign that, you know, that final offer, you're good to go and you're ready to go. Because we still have to get those docs regardless. It's just kind of taking that extra step to prepare that I think a lot of people don't think about sometimes. You know, there's so much excitement around, we're selling, we found the next dream home, let's get this ball rolling. And it's, you know, maybe the more boring aspect, but at the end of the day, it's going to make your transaction so much smoother. It's upfront, and then it gets done on a more timely manner.
So as a seller, it seems like you have more time to prepare, but as a buyer, who do I go to ask questions if we're getting a whole bunch of documentation from escrow? Like, can I talk to the escrow officer and ask questions, or is that more of like a real estate agent?
Absolutely. You know, I think as long as you're working with a good agent, at the end of the day, we're all here for you. You can always call your escrow officer, you know, between the senior officer, the junior officer, myself, someone will help you and wants to help you. You know, there's so much lingo and terms that can be confusing if you're not in this industry day in and day out. You could have sold a house 5 times and it still might be a little bit confusing. Every deal is so unique. So yeah, absolutely. Our team is always here to answer questions. Your real estate agent can always help too. But we love to be a resource if there's any questions.
Great. Are there any kind of like tips or, you know, tricks or anything like that for, you know, both a seller and a buyer to best have the best experience?
I think the best piece of advice I could give is, you know, don't be afraid to ask questions. I think a lot of people are afraid to ask questions because they assume that this is, you know, something that everybody knows. You know, have your documents prepared, get ready, work with a good lender or work with a good real estate agent. It's going to make a huge difference at the end of the day. And don't be shy about sharing with your team, you know, hey, this is what's going on. We haven't, you know, I mentioned earlier, if you haven't paid certain fees on time, being upfront about that can make everything just go a lot smoother and can help you move on to that next step, which is hopefully a really exciting next step.
Yeah, that's great. So then, okay, so like the transaction, what are you saying, Jeff?
Well, like, so that a lot of the stuff I talked about on the, with regards to, you know, the title report and what title does, but a lot of stuff comes in play when you're on the buy side, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to definitely, you know, the title report might be complete, but there's different things listed on the title report that the homeowner's policy will have, and there'll be mentions of easements and different stuff that affect the property. And as a buyer, you want to make sure that you investigate some of those items that are on the report. There's easements on most properties with regards to telecom, drainage, other things like that, where I've seen where, you know, people didn't, you could ask the title company to have them plotted and laid out and colored and show them where they're located on your property. Because I mean, who's to say you get this And whenever I see a property that's definitely, you know, you got different property that's larger and bigger in scope, and I always order plotted easements for all reports and take a look to see if any of those items, because like, hey, somebody might be, you know, buying this house and they down the road they want to put a big old pool in the back, and there's a random drainage easement that might, you know, be going right through the middle of the property in the backyard that they didn't even know about because they weren't alerted to look at it on their title report. Because obviously the easement, you couldn't build anything in that location in case they got to come and do work on it, right? So this is just some area of the property that is there for your use, but in the event that that company or whoever has that easement or road, that needs to access that property, you'd want to know that that is there. And if you did not know and did not see that when you bought the property, you'd probably be a little, wouldn't be too happy.
Yeah, so the easement is like, say, a third party person who has access to your property even though you own it.
Right. It's like, it's like Cox Cable, SD, G&E. They're going to, or, a water company's, pipelines or stuff going underneath the, through the property under the land that you don't even know it's there. It's literally listed on your report that these items are located on the property. You just want to make sure that they're plotted and they're shown to where you're aware where they're located. So in the event down the road that you're trying to do something, in exactly even where your property line is, sometimes
yeah, how about like
probably one of the
would like that come up? Like, like your fence is in the right spot or the wrong spot, or your neighbor said.
Well, no, so there's a lot of different ways you could do it, right? I mean, we are obviously not a surveying company, right? We take a plat map and we look at it, and we could give you an aerial overlay of where your property line is, compared to the actual plat map, and lay it on the thing, and you'll see it. And that's probably the most common question. Like, oh, the neighbor says my fence is 6 feet on his property, right? It's like, nobody wants to. I mean, that's a big expenditure, right? If you got to go move a fence. So what we could do is we could send, in the process itself, we could order an inspector to come out to walk the property lines, to show you and give you a small report exactly where your boundaries are, to make sure that down the road there isn't an encroachment by your property or the neighboring property. So I think that's probably one of we do a lot of that work. That people have questions on the exact property line, or there could be like an easement agreement if somebody has a capability of, crossing one little tiny part of your property to access there. So all of these would be listed on your title report that we help the buyer or seller go over and explain the ins and outs and how they're, where they're located on their property. So these are all different items we get ahead of time. As same thing Jordan mentioned, by doing the pre-work with the pre-escrow and the prelim, is that we get all these items set up ahead of time. So we're able to disclose and make everybody aware, so that it's not, 3 weeks into an escrow that you're finding out that there's these issues on the property.
So for a seller, it's extremely important.
That's the good agent. Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah. For a seller, it's extremely important to get all that information up front so that we can disclose everything, so there's no potential for lawsuit. As a buyer, it's that time period that you're talking about is during the investigation period. And so that's where we're leaning heavily on yourself and escrow to get, information, to do the due diligence, to find out everything we can about the property, to make sure that it checks out with you guys or a surveyor or any other specialist in the field for questions that we have about the property.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well then, if people have more questions, comments, or concerns, Jeff, how do people get in contact with you?
Well, definitely they could, obviously any agent they're working with, yourself or anybody in the company, they'll pass my information. If I would have had my phone number on my contact there with Jeff Moore, that's an added bonus we're going to put in there. But anybody at Lawyers Title, myself, any teammates, we're all here to help regardless. But
GTS, Google that stuff. Jeff Morey, yeah. Lawyers Title.
If you just Google Lawyers Title, I come up. It's all good.
Perfect. So, and then how about you, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, I can drop my email, my cell phone, but same thing. If you go to portfolioescrow.com, I'll be on there. Myself and my team are always happy to answer questions. Even if you don't have an active deal going right now, you maybe are considering selling and you're curious, hey, what kind of documentation do I need to start to get together? We can always help you figure that out ahead of time.
Well, cool. Any kind of last minute closing comments that we have? Crickets.
It was great.
Wonderful.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me, Greg.
Well, I appreciate the conversation, guys.
It was awesome.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think anything we can do to educate buyers and sellers, you know, like I said, I know it can be an emotional process, but it's a really exciting one too. And when you work with professional people who know what they're talking about, know what they're doing, it can make a world of difference during your transaction.
Cool. Well, reach out to these people if you have questions, comments, concerns, and thank you for listening along, and we will talk to you guys soon. Have a great day. Oh, wait, shit. Oh, we'll have to edit that part out. Hold on. Oh, no. We got to stop recording. There we go.